Today we're going to look at a bass. This is a Fender Mustang bass from 1976. So it's rapidly approaching 50 years old. But it still likes to kick, stretch, and kick. Did you get that one? Half of you too old, the other half are too young. Quick overview, because we did one of these in the not too distant past, last year or two. The Mustang bass was introduced as a junior model, something for the little tykes to play with, in 1966. In that year, your 12-year-old needed to learn the paperback rider bass line to impress the girls at school. You don't want to stunt his social growth now, do you, Dad? What would Dr. Spock say? Is it really a kid's guitar? Well, it's got the 30-inch scale. It's got a slightly shorter neck, too, with only 19 frets. So I guess the small of stature could feel more comfortable. And the body is exactly the same as a Mustang guitar. So it's really light and fluffy. But a lot of grown-up musicians have played it. Can't name any kid musicians. No, Danny Partridge played this wild and crazy Ovation. This example has some really nice flame on the headstock. So yeah, modifications were done at some point. Got this humbucking, I don't know what that's off of. Seems to have a whole lot of pole pieces. And the original place for the pickups was blocked off with this, what seems to be part of a name tag or something. Hopefully the original route is still under there because we can use it as a template, because we're going to be restoring this back to something a little more like the original. It also picked up a mysterious switch along the way. And this plate is, well, non-original looking. So we're going to put a different plate on there as well. The action on this bass, we're going to lose the plastic coated strings, but it's a little higher than many people would like, but it is exactly in the wheelhouse of the player who owns it. It's around 7/64ths, 6/64ths on the bass side. So that's good. The setup should be fairly easy. So we got a pickup here from Nordstrand Audio. Tone Bomb. Kaboom. Oh, does anyone remember that game? I think it was an Activision game, probably 1982. There's a mad bomber. He would drop little bombs and you'd have to pick them up in buckets of water. I got so insanely good at that game. It's one of only 2 video games I was ever really invested in. Yeah, I could have competed. The super short scales can be difficult to string. Got several turns worth of string proper on the posts before you even get to the leader. One thing a little unusual about the Mustangs is they're strung through the body. You don't see that all that often on Fender basses. I guess they were looking for every extra inch of string length that they could use up. And of course these are always going to be loose, the string ferrules. So we'll try and glue those back in place. See what's going on under all of this. This is what we mean when we talk about the 1970s poly finishes. I believe this is a polyester. I don't believe it's polyurethane at this point, but they're thick. I mean, they're optically, you can tell just looking at those cracks that they go in a long ways. And if you do happen to get a chip, you can see that filling that with anything other than super glue would take months. Yeah, they sprayed them on very thick at this point. I'm going to go ahead and remove the thumb rest as well, because it's also holding the pickguard down. These pickup mounting screws are also going to impede progress. I'm really interested to see what this pickup is. So many pull pieces. Is it a 5-string bass, or at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half? That's odd. 11 pole pieces. Well, we have some copper shielding. What is going on there? That's interesting. Okay, got some vintage tape. The original Fender serial number. Someone plotted carefully. When you shield something like this cavity, you really do have to have contact between it and the housing on the pickup or something. I guess maybe the screws we're going through. But unless it's connected to the rest of the ground scheme, it's not going to do very much. And this was routed. It almost looks like it was done freehand with a die grinder. That's fun. Let's see what's on this side. Okay. That all looks fairly standard, except for... I'm sure I can figure out what that switch does. Coil split, maybe? For the pickup? I bet you that's it. So, disengage the pickup and see what this needs to get it back to usual specs. Okay, no identifying marks at all on the pickup other than the letter B. There are two wooden spacers on either side of the magnet next to the pole pieces here. And I guess one of the other identifying characteristics would be two height adjustment screws on either side, which lets you level the pickup in line with the strings rather than having to live with whatever sort of angle you end up with from the top of the pickup ring. Yeah, so still don't know what that is. Masking tape is not really an archivally safe material. It's not nearly as bad as some others. It has an acidic component that will eventually make it extremely brittle. Well, wouldn't you know it. Like I said, the law states it is not permissible for guitar modifications to be easy. I think these new pickups, they are designed for Mustang, but I think they're sized for the Japanese reissue of the Mustang rather than the original. They've got slightly larger dimensions. So I can't use this as a direct template. I'm going to have to modify things more. Okay. I'll try and be thrifty with the plastic. You never know when an offcut's going to be just the right size for a truss rod cover or a trim cover or something. This area here where the control plate joins up, I'm going to give myself an allowance because in this area there's often some weird misalignment of parts, so I can custom fit if I leave it generous. And I'm going to trace the original pickup holes because they'll give me a positioning guide, if nothing else. Now this part is going to seem a little bit crazy, but I'm actually going to score along the outline. This, when I come to sand the thing to shape, will produce an automatic breakaway point for the tape. Otherwise, what can happen is the sanding action will loosen it and fold it over, making the line indistinct or basically obliterating it. And this will give me a mark in the actual plastic if that happens. I can always go back and use that, or like I said, just let the tape break away on the line. I'm not making a template of this one because the odds of me having to make another Mustang bass guard are quite slim. This saw employs a blade which is in the form of a continuous steel band with teeth on it, and it's called a band saw. This sanding machine employs a grit-impregnated disc of paper, and it's called a disc sander. This machine bores holes using a drill that's actuated by a pressing action, supported by a pillar, so it's called a drill press, or a pillar drill, depending on your location. All the screw holes require a vigorous countersink. I'll use a file, a sanding block, and a scraper to get the shape more refined. Now comes a critical step. I have to plot the position of the pickups, and there's not a whole lot of room to play around here. I have to measure the spacing between the pole piece slugs and use that to derive a string spread and a center line. And hopefully that jibes with the actual spacing of the strings. And also hopefully that falls within the pre-routed space in the body. So the distance between the center of these pairs of slugs is 18 millimeters. Times 3 is 54 millimeters for the total width of the spacing. I think that'll be okay compared to what was previously there. So I measured and plotted and triple checked and then drilled holes that define the total length of the recesses. So 3/4 inch holes. Marked some lines to join them. Sawed close to the lines with a fine-toothed saw. And filed off the rest of the material until the pickup covers were a nice snug fit. That's nice. And now I can scrape a bevel exposing the 3-plied pickguard. The sharp-eyed of you will recognize that the original guard was a 4-ply guard. You'll find that purchasing 4-ply plastic is very expensive in comparison to 3-ply. And if I was doing this in a production situation, I would obviously make myself a template and be doing this with a specialized angled router bit with a pattern following bearing. And now I'll fit the new control plate over top of the area that needs to be scribed. I say new, but it's actually old, it's vintage. And I'll mark along that line. In this case, I've got a guitar with a neck that fits really snugly in its pocket, so I can actually leave these areas slightly oversized and routed in place. That's satisfying. Back to filing the intersection between the guard and the control plate. There's sort of a natural order of things. You want to do one task before getting the next one done, because sometimes the guard can shift slightly. I'm checking areas that might need some material removed. The exposed white of the guard is exceptionally white in comparison to everything else on the guitar. So I'm just going to dull that down with a little bit of yellow marker. Okay, continuing in our epic series of no, it can't possibly be that easy. These pickups were provided with screws. The issue is the base plates here are not threaded to accept them. Getting them in position, I'll turn that all day and it will not go down in the hole. At a certain point it'll start maybe digging its own hole, but it won't be the right size. These are machine screws. They're not really designed to cut their own hole. So I guess I'll modify one of these to make a tap, because I'm not going to go through my entire collection trying to find screws that match whatever's in these base plates. Thin Dremel cutoff wheel. I'm just going to cut a slot perpendicular to the threads and kind of undercut slightly. This has effectively become a tap. Okay, I tested my rig, figured out what kind of clearance hole I needed, and I'll drill these base plates out. Now this, of course, recognize I've got the lead wire there 2 centimeters away from where I'm doing all of this, And this isn't the first time it's happened. I'm not wild about this. Ideally, this tap would be slightly tapered at the end. It is not, so I have to be very careful about starting this. So I'm going to advance it a turn and then back it out. This gives the material that's being cut a chance to get out of there. It's more important with metal than it is with this fiber material, which is impregnated with something like a resin. Okay, that is now threaded and will accept these screws. You shouldn't have to do that when you purchase a set of, I think this pickup was like $120. Okay, those are installed with little springs, and yeah, like I always say, just beware if you're going to assemble a kit guitar, do this kind of stuff, just be prepared. Almost, oh, so close. Yeah, no. Of course it's not going to fit. What does it think it is, a Japanese version or something? Come on. I'm measuring and trying to decide if I have to disconnect the ground wire, which comes through a hole which is about halfway up the sidewall. Then I got out my little trim router and freehand routed the ends of those slots to a depth of about 13 millimeters. And not a whole lot of extra material needed to be removed, but I'm not going to show you that because it's freehand routing. And, you know, someone's going to ask me how to do it, and I'll say, if you have to ask that question, you're not prepared and will never be. We'll take apart the old harness. I'm going to retain that old USA-made Switchcraft jack. They really don't make them like that anymore. They're really nice. And then I thought, hold on a second, just, you know, take a minute, install the whole thing on the new plate, and just see what it does. What are these components like? I've strung this up to do some testing with the wiring that it came with, minus that mini switch, of course, to see what it's like, because sometimes we get lucky. The thing is, though, it was put together with 500k ohm pots, which is probably what you'd want for a humbucker in the neck position. Usually with single coils we'll see 250k ohms used, because that rolls off a bit more of the highs and makes like a less brittle toppy sound, something that's not really prized in a bass. The other thing, though, the tone pot is a B type, which in the case of these alpha mini pots denotes a linear taper. Paradoxically, our ears don't perceive a linear taper in the expected way. They don't sound very linear. And in this case, all of the pot's function is bunched up in about 5 degrees of turn. The difference between fully off and fully on is that. It's like less than 1/8 of an inch, which I don't think is particularly useful. So I'm going to put 250k pots, and they'll both be logarithmic taper, or audio taper. And I'm going to use a 0.047 microfarad capacitor. These are all stock Fender numbers. They use them for a reason. Some time ago I was a astute young businessman, purchased a whole bunch of 250k pots, but to get the quantity discount they all had to be the same, so I figured there's a whole lot of Strats out there and I should get the split shafts. Occasionally you run into one that isn't a split shaft type knob. It's very useful to have a supply of those little conversion bushings which fur out the thickness and make it possible to use the split shaft pots with set screw type knobs. So there we go. Everything's together. All the grounds are included. Now we have much more of a sweep. Okay, I think we're going to call that a video. I've still got a couple of little areas, high frets to dress down. But I'm going to have a nap first after editing this video to appease the AI overlords. Get this up, and then I'll do that later on tonight when I'm fresh. Gosh, these basses are nice because they're so light.